On behalf of the League of Women Voters of the Spokane area, welcome to our 2021 primary election candidate forum featuring candidates for Spokane Public Schools Board of Director, District 81, Position 3. All voters within the boundaries of Spokane School District number 81 will select two of these candidates to advance to the general election. I'm Lisa Kuhar, your moderator, and Sally Phillips of the League is the timer. Election day for the 2021 primary election is Tuesday, August 3rd, 2021. Ballots will be mailed to all registered voters about 3 weeks prior to Election Day and must be postmarked or deposited in conveniently located ballot boxes no later than 8 p.m. on Election Day. You can register to vote by mail or online by July 26, 2021, or in person on Election Day at the Spokane County Elections Office, 1033 West Gardner Avenue, or at Center Place, 2426 North Discovery Place, Spokane Valley. For other questions about casting your ballot or information about the candidates, contact the Spokane County Elections Office, area code 509-477-2320, or visit their website, spokanecounty.org/elections, or on the League of Women Voters online voters guide, Vote 411 at vote411.org. I will be asking the candidates questions that have been formulated by the League's Voter Services Committee, and will ask as many questions as time allows. Before the questions begin, the candidates will have up to 30 seconds to introduce themselves and tell the voters why they are running. They will have up to 1 minute to answer each question with additional time for rebuttal or a follow-up question as appropriate. And each candidate will have the opportunity for a 30-second closing statement. The first speaker will alternate with each question. And now we meet our candidates for Spokane Public Schools Board of Director, District 81, Position 3. The candidates are Dr. Melissa Bedford, Dr. Daryl Gefkin, and Karina Hernandez. Also running but unavailable to participate today are Richard Gangliosi, Daryl Johnson, Jake Leadingham, and Ken Cameron, and Andrew Mendez. We will start our opening comments with Nate Bedford. You have 30 seconds to tell us why you're running for Spokane Public Schools Board of Director, Position 3.
Thank you so much for having me. Hi, everyone. My name is Dr. Melissa Bedford. My pronouns are she, her, and I am running for School Board Position 3 to bring an educator's voice to the table. So I am a former public school teacher from Title I schools and now a current teacher educator where I'm helping prepare future teachers enter Spokane Public Schools as educators. And I want to make sure that my passion for education will be a valuable voice and really help our community and Spokane Public Schools and the students, teachers, and families, as we re-enter school. So I'm running to bring that educator experience, and thank you so much for having me today.
Thank you, Candidate Bedford. Candidate Gefkin, your opening comments.
Absolutely. My name is Daryl Gefkin. I'm a proud father of 2 students in District 81. I am married since 1997 to a lady who went through Jefferson, Sacagawea, and then LC. And although I have not been a native of Spokane, I've been working in the community for almost 20 years. 3 different areas that are really, I think, relevant to the board. And the first is I was in professional student ministry for almost 2 decades, working alongside educators as well. I advanced into higher education, where I was an adjunct professor at Gonzaga University and Eastern Washington. And then I was also a financial advisor and continue to provide just a high level of, stewardship to people's resources.
Thank you, Candidate Gefkin. Candidate Hernandez, your opening comments, please.
I am Karina Hernandez, and I have 3 children in Wilson Elementary, 2 at Wilson Elementary and 1 at Sacagawea. And I'm running because I want parents to volunteer and get together, parents and teachers. I believe that if we work as a team, kids will progress better and we can make a difference in the school district and make some changes that we want to make as the parents and teachers combine together. So working for solutions as a team.
Thank you, Candidate Hernandez. We will turn to our questions, and the first question will go to Candidate Gefkin. What specific policies or procedures in District 81 would you wish to see changed or enhanced, and why?
Yeah, absolutely. I think in terms of policies and procedures, the thing that I would like to see enhanced would be an opportunity for all. One of the things that I have been looking at, and one of the reasons why I'm running, or three of the reasons I'm running actually, first one is on the idea of transparency. I think that there needs to be very clear, open, and honest communication between the board and the school district with its constituency. And I think that that policy of increasing opportunity for back and forth communication in a really transparent way would be something I would honor. Second thing is going to be the advocacy piece, and I would say I would want to increase the opportunities for students and for parents and for teachers to be able to have a stronger advocate voice into the board. And the third thing is opportunity for all students to become the best version of themselves. And so for me, I would look and I would say, how is it that we can actually address the variety of different issues that certainly have come to light and have been spotlighted during the pandemic that show that there are a variety of different students who need a very different approach to actually become the best version of themselves.
Thank you, Candidate Gefkin. Candidate Hernandez, same question. What specific policies or procedures in District 81 would you wish to see changed or enhanced, and why?
One of them was making sure all kids have the same opportunity. And during COVID, I realized that we had an issue where our Wi-Fi was having issues, so we had to go to the school and we could not use the Wi-Fi. The Wi-Fi from the school, it's not good. So I was just thinking about other kids that the parents are not able to afford the low-income Comcast $9.99 internet Wi-Fi a month. Are those kids able to do work at home? Are they staying behind? So making sure
15 seconds remains.
not every kid stay behind, and making sure we're hearing our teachers also what they need in school for we could help them with the students. And pretty much it. That's what my focus.
Thank you, Candidate Hernandez. And Candidate Bedford, same question. What specific policies or procedures in District 81 would you wish to see changed or enhanced, and why?
So I would like to see us look at how we are approaching education, for one, because after a year of distance learning, we have seen that online learning does work for some students. There are some students who have thrived, but we also know it doesn't work for all. So I think we really need to look into how we can provide different opportunities for our students and support our students and families, as well as support the teachers as they are approaching and implementing these different approaches. Another thing I want to look at is access to education, just like Karina said, on making sure that all students have access to internet when we're doing online learning. So we know that access is not equitable right now, so we need to look into that. And finally, we really need to look at how we are approaching diversity, equity, and inclusion in our schools. And so with the most recent equity resolution that was passed last June, I would love to see that more enhanced and really implemented in the district to make sure all students and teachers and their families, not just the students, but everyone in our community, feel welcome and included in schools, because schools should be a safe place for students and families to be a part of.
Thank you, Candidate Bedford. We'll turn to our second question, Candidate Hernandez. Please give us your thoughts on District 81's response to the pandemic. How will lessons learned affect education in District 81 going forward? What additional funding will be needed, and where will it come from?
Okay, so my children, I have 3 kids, 2 kids have dyslexia, and I spoke to other parents regarding IEP teachers, and unfortunately the school district does not have a lot of IEP, so I think that was a big struggle, especially with parents that we need our children's in IEP programs. So I was speaking to a parent that her son is blind, and how can we get funds for the IEP program where we can have more teachers for the school district? So that's something I'm still speaking to more people, and hopefully we could get funds for it.
Thank you, Candidate Hernandez. Candidate Bedford, please give us your thoughts on District 81's response to the pandemic. How will lessons learned affect education in District 81 going forward? What additional funding will be needed, and where will it come from?
Thank you for this question. I think right now is a great time to reevaluate education. As I mentioned before, we know that online learning is helpful and supports some students, but it doesn't support all. So I think it's important that we look at those different options of how we can support students. I do appreciate how District 81 approached the pandemic and were responsive. And I know it's tough for teachers and families when you're not sure what the day-to-day decisions are, but working with the health district and making sure they were making informed decisions for the health and safety of our community. So I appreciate how they approached on that. And, now as we're re-entering schools and supporting our students with funding, of course, I think we need to keep supporting levies and bonds to make sure we're getting those funds to pay for more support staff and paraprofessionals that can support students with IEPs. I also think that we've seen an opportunity gap emerge through this pandemic, which turns into an achievement gap. And so we really need to make sure we're providing those supports, getting funding. We have McCleary that was made and that helped support the teachers, but we got to keep supporting the funding for our teachers to make sure that we can support our students.
Thank you, Candidate Bedford. Candidate Gefkin, the same
Absolutely.
question. Do you want me to reread it?
No, that's fine. Thank you. The pandemic hit everyone, and what do we do? There was so much confusion in those first couple of months, and so from my standpoint, the real disappointment in the response came during the summer, when it was very clear that there was going to be a fundamental change in how we were delivering education, how we're engaging students. To see that there was a lack of proactive response to gear up for that year, to the point where then we had an additional 2 weeks of stalled time to train teachers into that format, was a real disappointment. And I think that set the stage for what continued to be, what has turned out to be a significant lack of engagement across the entire district. We talk about disparity and opportunity gaps. And I think what's happened is we've seen a very strong K type of disparity gap create. So we've got people who have got internet access, they've got different abilities, they've had people who could stay at home and help them. And then we've got people who are very much on the outside of things. And so I would address that. And that's going to be our primary issue looking forward in the next year. How do we re-engage all the different types of students?
Thank you, Candidate Gefkin. Okay, we'll turn to Candidate Bedford for this question first. With regard to the proposed boundary changes for various schools, how successful has the district been in communicating these changes to the public? What would you do differently?
For the proposed boundaries, I have to say first, I really admire those that have served on the committee, because this is no easy feat to take on when you're making a decision that's going to impact our students and families for years to come. It took 40 years to change them, and to do it again, that's a big thing. I really appreciated in the most recent, actually a couple recent ago, school board meeting, where they did pause to take more time to look at that equity lens, because it is kind of a blaring thing where you see that some schools are increasing the RFRL percentages and some are decreasing. But I think, we really just need to focus on making sure we are implementing equitably the funding to different schools and making sure we're communicating with the community and connecting with our families to hear what they have to say about this. So. Thank you.
Thank you, Candidate Bedford. Candidate Gefkin, same question, and I will reread it if you'd like.
No, that's just fine. Thank you. I agree that it's insanely important that we are addressing this issue to go almost 40 years, considering the growth and just the transition of Spokane and the greater community. We need to reassess those things. I think there are a lot of people who don't feel as though they were heard in this process, and I think that's a shame. Everyone needs to be addressed. And I think in particular right now, what we're seeing is a lot of rentals are people who rent, there's going to be a lot of transition. And so our funding is going to be a very real issue based on this and based on the boundaries that are drawn. I think it's interesting that the school board sent out a very easy to access survey on the stadium issue. But there wasn't that type of proactive approach in terms of really gleaning a variety of different voices, all of whom are going to be impacted by these decisions. And so that would be something that I would want to have seen and would continue to want to do in terms of clear and honest communication, is find different ways to remove roadblocks for people being able to add their voice.
Thank you, Candidate Gefkin. Candidate Hernandez, with regard to the proposed boundary changes for various schools, How successful has the district been in communicating these changes to the public? What would you do differently?
Differently, I would
You're muted.
send people like to do surveys in person, and some of the families that don't have internet, because I got an email, I even got it through the city, and I did the survey, so it was informative, especially on the emails, and you could scan and see the boundaries of old one and the new one. But I think there's a lot of people that they don't have internet access, so I would have just done different. That I will have the volunteers go and meet people like in Riverfront Park or at the park and ask them how do they feel about it in their opinion.
Thank you, candidate Hernandez. Question 4, we'll start with candidate Gefkin. How can the school board work collaboratively with families and community members, particularly with underrepresented communities in Spokane?
There's got to be a more proactive approach. I think there's also a way that we can continue to incorporate and extend our partnership with local organizations to include some of the incredible things that are going on across all of Spokane. The issue right now, it very much is access to communication. I think that is something that's a problem. I think a road tour type of situation would be very, very helpful to go ahead and make sure that we have presence as a board and as you know, as people who are proxies of the board to actually go into neighborhoods and communicate with them, open up forums, allow people to be heard and listened to. So I think that's an important piece to it. I think the other thing, quite honestly, is to make sure that the communication that comes back to parents is actually reiterating what they're saying. You know, what we have heard, and here's why we are moving forward in the direction that we are. That type of clear and honest and open communication is going to go miles in terms of helping people know that they have been heard and that their values and their input is important.
Thank you, candidate Gefkin. Same question, candidate Hernandez. How can the school board work collaboratively with families and community members, particularly with underrepresented communities in Spokane?
I believe they should allow parents to volunteer and make it at least mandatory once a year for the parents to be involved and they can know what's going on. You know, we have those parents that they have to work, and we have parents that both of them work at home and kids are on their own. So I feel like at least once a year will not affect the parents economically to miss work and be able to spend it at school and get to know what's actually going on. Unfortunately, there's a lot of misunderstanding because a lot of parents believe the children instead of the teacher was saying. And I think I had an issue with my son where I had a meeting and the special teacher, IEP teacher, say, "Well, your son cries, but he won't do the work." And I was like, "Oh, okay. Well, let my son cry and let him. He would get the work done sooner or later." And that's how he stopped crying at school, and he started doing his work at school. So I think it's really important, you know, when there's communication between parents and teachers, kids will progress and do better. Right now, he says, Dr. Julia, he has A's and B's. So I have noticed the difference as communicating with the teacher and being part of it.
Thank you, candidate Hernandez. And candidate Bedford, same question. How can the school board work collaboratively with families and community members, particularly with underrepresented communities in Spokane?
This is a question very near and dear to my heart. Like I mentioned earlier, I'm a former public school teacher at Title I schools. So it was more than just teaching my students. It was becoming part of their family and communities. And one of the greatest things that I ever participated in, and I would love to see implemented in District 81, is a home visit program. And so the way that program worked was, as teachers and administrators in schools, we would go and visit the families at their home. If they weren't comfortable with that, we would find a community-based location. And it was a matter of connecting them with them in the community, not just bringing them into school all the time. Because when we think about inviting parents into school, it's either parent-teacher conferences, maybe a fun school event, or your kid got in trouble. So this was a positive thing of learning about the families and connecting with them. And I know this is somewhat addressed in the equity resolution that was passed. So I would love to see more programs like that where we are getting into their communities and meeting them where they're at. And it's just so rewarding. And, you know, you really just build those long lasting relationships with families in the community. And so I love it. And I hope we can do that in District 81.
Thank you, candidate Bedford. Question 5, candidate Hernandez. Critical race theory and racial equity are terms much in the news lately. What do you think these mean, and how would they impact the policies of the school board?
You know, I'll be honest. I grew up in Chicago. There's even discrimination within our own race. You know, I think if we do this, we'll be focused on how we discriminate between each race instead of showing that there's also discrimination between our own race. You know, we got people where they distinguish each other by society, or they distinguish each other even between our race, or because we use any excuse. So I really feel uncomfortable with it, but I know this is a wide open different opinion. So this is from someone that I grew up in a big city. So we all think different, and this is just where I feel.
Okay. Thank you, candidate Hernandez. Candidate Bedford, same question. Critical race theory and racial equity are terms much in the news lately. What do you think these mean, and how would they impact the policies of the school board?
So critical race theory is a framework, and I'm actually pretty well versed in it because I do study and research how to use the critical race theory framework in classrooms at a developmentally appropriate way for students from P through 12th grade. And one of the ways I do that is through children's literature. Most recently, I had the privilege of working with APIC Spokane and the Spokane Public Libraries to host a 3-part series of how to use children's literature to help families and kids learn about and talk about race. I think when we put this negative stigma on critical race theory, we're now saying that there's this taboo on race, and so we can't talk about it. It's not something that is good. And then that keeps fueling the disparities that are happening between different racial groups. And so using children's literature, you can see behind me, I actually have a lot of my diverse children's literature. That's a way to enter developmentally appropriate and learn about different cultures and talk about what makes them special, what makes us special, but having those conversations, because we know kids notice race, so we need to make an opportunity in a safe environment for students to talk about race.
Thank you, candidate Bedford. Candidate Gefkin, same question. Do you want it reread?
No, that's fine. Yeah, in my academic experience, critical race theory is a sociological construct. It teaches people how to view the world. It teaches them this is the lens through which you need to interpret things. My primary issue with it is that prioritizing it at the elementary school and secondary school level distracts people from the opportunity to actually create some foundational or develop foundational skills and the building blocks that they need to excel in life. This is something that is insanely passionate to me as well, because for the 2 years I was a student minister and working in socioeconomic groups, the idea of disparity across all levels, whether that's race or whether that's economics, whether it's anything, the ability, the inability for certain people to have a voice is a horrible thing. And we need to find a way that we can advocate for that. One of the things that I used to do is working in inner city San Francisco, would just sit down the street and say, look, every person that I know has got a story, and it's my opportunity to collect that story. And that's something that I think is very, very valuable in how we can approach it, as opposed to simply saying this is an overlay of how you should look at the world.
Thank you, candidate Gefkin. For question 6, we'll go to candidate Bedford first. What should the role of the schools be in teaching students about non-academic issues such as sex education, cyber safety, bullying, or wellness?
I believe school is a place where students should have that opportunity to talk about it. Being a former public school teacher, we did have share programs, which was sex education, and families had the opportunities to opt out of that program if they did not feel their comfortable for their child to participate. But I know for my school, where many of my students were from low socioeconomic backgrounds and different cultures, that was the only opportunity for them to learn about sex education and other topics that they might not have been able to talk about at home. And so having that opportunity, I think, is important because, again, it goes back to access to education, and we need to provide those spaces. And so that's something, with the most recent sex education bill that passed in Washington and how it is developmentally appropriate, I really appreciate that approach to making sure we're talking and building that foundation as far as like biology goes, but then again, offering families to opt out if they aren't comfortable with their children learning about that in schools. But I do believe we need to have a place for that because sometimes that school's the only place that students feel safe to talk about these topics.
Thank you, Candidate Bedford. Candidate Gefkin, same question.
Sure.
What should the role of the schools be in teaching students about non-academic issues such as sex education, cyber safety, bullying, or wellness?
Absolutely. Well, there's a variety of different topics, and there's a variety of different approaches that we need to take towards those topics. Something such as bullying immediately and directly impacts the educational culture of the school. So it needs to be addressed. Those are things that have to be addressed, and schools need to be equipped not only to be able to communicate and teach on it, but also enforce issues when they see it occur. So that should happen. In terms of sex ed, absolutely should be part of the curriculum. There's no question it should be part of the curriculum. It's a human, it's a human health issue, and therefore there are a lot of things that need to be covered. That said, something like sex ed is also a very, very intimate topic with a variety of different viewpoints. And I believe that parent choice should be the primary point that's being honored. When we go into something that crosses maybe from a human health standpoint into something that people would convey or construe as being a moral issue.
Thank you, Candidate Gefkin. Candidate Hernandez, what should the role of the schools be in teaching students about non-academic issues such as sex education, cyber safety, bullying, or wellness?
I think it's really important in schools, especially nowadays. There's a lot of bullying. There's a lot of young girls, unfortunately, getting pregnant. So I think learning it at school and know that there's way to protect themselves. There's consequence to it. Also in bullying, hopefully in the near future, it will make things better at school where kids are not bullying as much because they know their consequence, and kids preventing sex at such a young age. So I'm hoping to look at a good outcome to this in the near future.
Thank you, Candidate Hernandez. Question 7, we'll start with Candidate Hernandez. What are the major issues facing District 81 in the short term and in the long term? How should the school board address these?
Well, I think one of the issues I have noticed is we're not getting enough funds to cover different opportunities. We have kids that think out of the box, not inside the box. And I just wish we could look a way to get more funds and hopefully speak to parents and to work together, and we could go to Olympia and get funds for our kids' education, because not every kid thinks inside the box. Not all the kids learn the same way. We have kids that learn by hands, and then we have kids that are good at reading. So I think just having diversity and opportunities for these children, for they will not give up in school and quit it, find a way for all of them to graduate and go to college. So I think that's one of the works that we need to work in District 81.
Thank you, Candidate Hernandez. Candidate Gefkin, same question. What are the major issues facing District 81 in the short term and in the long term, and how should the board address these?
Sure. I think the very, very first thing that we need to address in a very significant way is almost a triage type of way is the reality of lack of engagement over the last year. We need to find a variety of different ways to re-engage our students. And frankly, we need to find ways to re-engage our teachers as well. There's far too much anecdotal evidence in terms of students who have just fallen by the waysides and fallen, in the cracks. And then people who are not necessarily stepping up to say, how do we close that opportunity gap, not just within the district, but actually relative to other districts and relative to other states. So that's a big issue. Second thing is funding. we're looking at, with increased house costs going on, we're seeing that, likelihood is that people who are in rental spots are going to be ousted out of their properties. There's a variety of different ways that different programs are funded. I think a lot of people don't understand how that works, and that needs to be something that's prioritized. I absolutely think that there should be an advocate in Olympia to say, how can we redirect and accrue a lot more resources to fund the different programs that we've got.
Thank you, Candidate Gefkin and Candidate Bedford. What are the major issues facing District 81 in the short term and in the long term? How should the board address these?
For short-term goals, I think number one is the equity resolution and making sure we're implementing that in District 81 and supporting our teachers and students and families so that all students feel welcome and included in schools. The other short-term goal I think we really need to look at is supporting the mental health of our students and our teachers. We've had a very tough year. And so, as Dr. Gefkin said, making sure that we're supporting everyone and re-engaging them into learning. And I think that ties back to mental health. So making sure we can get those supports for students and the teachers as well, because teachers have been impacted, that we put more access to those mental health resources in schools. So those would be my top two short-term goals. And then of course, I echo what both my fellow candidates have said about making sure the long-term goals, we continue to get funding, we continue to look at education and how we approach it. I think we also need to look at providing more vocational school opportunities for students, because college is not the end goal for everyone. So making sure we're bringing back some of those, mechanics and home ec when we're thinking about those traditional things, bringing those back into schools, because I think it's important that we are offering more options to students.
Thank you, Candidate Bedford. And the last question, we'll start with Candidate Getkin. What do you believe is the best approach to school discipline? What policies should the board adopt regarding school discipline?
Absolutely. So again, really, really broad topic. I think the very first thing that we need to do is to triage each situation as it occurs. The first thing that we need to look through is a lens of safety for everyone. That involves the student, that involves the teacher, and involves the rest of the school community. And I've seen that as a volunteer for 2 decades in school. We need to make sure that the staff and support staff, including security, are provided with the real opportunities and skills to make sure that they can enforce that immediate safety concern. Then from that point, there needs to be much more of an approach of really discerning what is going on, what is happening. So in terms of school counseling, in terms of people who are walking alongside students to say, just because we see you act in such and such a way does not mean that the end result should be expulsion, should not be, getting sent to the principal's office, those sorts of things. There's no one cut way of dealing with that. And generally speaking, in terms of mental health, we need to be able to have people on site who can help discern what is going on and how are we able to tactically move forward to address those issues.
Thank you, Candidate Gefkin. Candidate Hernandez. Same question. What do you believe is the best approach to school discipline? What policies should the board adopt regarding school discipline?
I believe that discipline depends on the child. I know that there's kids with mental health issues, and I know that they're kind of aggressive, and we need to think about it before we expel them because they need to socialize. So I agree with my candidate. We should discipline each child different, and it's just different cases. So I know this kid, and he got expelled from school, and he has antisocial issues. So he's my neighbor, and I just wish he wouldn't get expelled from school. I wish the school had more resource to deal with this kid in a different way instead of expelling him and having more antisocial issues. So I know this is a parent job, but also they're in a school district, so we need to look out for those in our school district. So hopefully our discipline, I know it's a lot of work, and we could all work together and make a difference and discipline the child as their need.
Thank you, Candidate Hernandez. And Candidate Bedford, what do you believe is the best approach to school discipline? What policies should the board adopt regarding school discipline?
I'm going to repeat what I've mentioned before as far as the equity resolution and supporting mental health. I think we really need to look at that and make sure we're supporting that and implementing it in our schools. I also echo what my fellow candidates said about assessing the situations individually, because students are different and they have different stories. One of the things I would love to see is encouraging our teachers, especially our primary grade teachers, so our elementary school teachers, to give more time for community building in their classrooms. And as the school district, as the school board, creating opportunities to allow for more of that time. So, cutting back on some of the standardized testing because we know students are really over tested. But when we build that time into the classroom to allow for community building, that can help develop those skills of interacting with each other and those social skills. So if we make more time for that at the younger grades, that can help students as they get into high school and go and belong into society, of how to interact and work with others and talk about when things are not happening the way they want it to be. And I think that cuts down on a lot of school discipline as far as what happens when students have some stuff going on.
Thank you, Candidate Bedford. This concludes our questions. We'll now allow each of you 30 seconds for a closing statement. And Candidate Bedford, you go first.
Thank you again for inviting me and letting me be a part of this forum with the League of Women Voters of Spokane area. I'm very excited to be running for school board, and I would love, whoever's watching, I would love your support. Please feel free to visit my website at www.electbedford.com to sign up, get more updates. And then you can also even text me on there because I love connecting with people individually in the community. So please feel free to reach out. I would love to hear from you. And again, thank you so much for letting me join you today.
Thank you, Candidate Bedford. Candidate Gefkin, your closing comments, please.
Thank you as well for the opportunity to speak with the League of Women Voters and everyone who's going to be able to actually see this. On the school board, I'll prioritize 3 different things. It's going to be transparency and clear and honest communication. It's going to be advocacy for those people who feel disenfranchised and has lost their voice over the last couple of years. And it's going to be an opportunity for every student to become the best version of themselves. I'm a good fit for this because I've got students in the district. I'm a longtime parent within that. I've got 2 decades of either being an educator or being in partnership with educators. And my career as a comprehensive financial planner has allowed me to work with the resources of not only parents and people, but also institutions to help them fulfill their desires.
Thank you, Candidate Gefkin. Candidate Hernandez, your closing comments, please.
Thank you for inviting me, and thank you everyone else who's watching this. Again, my name is Karina Hernandez, and I'm just very grateful that you're taking your time to see this. And hopefully I get to hear from everyone and make friends during this time. Have a great day.
Thank you, Candidate Hernandez. This concludes our 2021 primary election candidate forum featuring candidates for Spokane Public Schools Board of Director, District 81, Position 3. Candidates Melissa Bedford, Daryl Gefkin, and Karina Hernandez. Also running are Richard Gangliosi, Daryl Johnson, Jake Leadingham, Kenneth Cameron, and Andrew Menendez, who are unable to participate. On behalf of the League of Voters, thank you to our candidates for participating in this forum. We hope this has given you, the voters, information that will help you make an informed decision when marking your ballots by Election Day, Tuesday, August 3rd, 2021. For more information, visit our website, lwvspokane.org, or our online voters guide, Vote 411, at vote411.org.